Hi, this is Zoe.
And this is Justina.
And this is the Empowered Healing Podcast. All right. Well, welcome back.
Thanks. Welcome back.
I'm excited to be here. We're starting a new little mini series, 3-part series.
Yeah.
And this time around, it's about neurodivergence.
Yes.
All the fun things that come along with it.
Mm-hmm. So misunderstood.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And seeing it more and more often now, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
Good to get some more firm understanding of what it is and what it looks like.
Yeah. And so obviously we'll explore it in multiple ways, but today we're focusing on specifically its relationship to mental health at large.
Yeah.
Of, how do conditions like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, other forms of brain diversity intersect with mental health? Why are so many neurodivergent people struggling? And it's not because of their brains. It's because of the world's expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. And in diving into that, we'll talk about the difference between neurodivergence and mental illness. It is not the same thing. And also talk about the unique mental health challenges that neurodivergent people face. And most importantly, how we can shift our systems and our understanding, affirmation, and support toward leaning into that.
Yeah, so for the listeners out there, whether you're neurodivergent yourself, you're supporting someone who's neurodivergent, or you're just simply curious and open to learning about something new, this episode is for you.
Yeah. So take a moment, check in with yourself, take a breath, get comfy, and let's talk about what it really means to show up for neurodivergent mental health. Yay!
So obviously that starts with what is neurodivergence. I think we hear it a lot nowadays.
Right.
It's almost like a pop psych word
Yeah.
in the way that it's gained traction.
Right.
But still, I feel like not super well laid out, I guess, in contemporary words, what even is neurodivergence?
Right. So really it refers to variations in brain functioning that diverge from what is considered neurotypical. So this includes things like autism, ADHD, ADHD, which is a co-occurring experience of autism and ADHD together. It is a dual diagnosis that while they can be separate, it is pretty frequent that they co-occur. So
yeah.
Recent research shows that 50 to 70% of autistic people also meet the criteria for ADHD. So they share a lot of neurological and genetic overlap. So lots of overlapping there. We'll talk more about that. Then things like dyslexia, Tourette syndrome, dyspraxia, and neurodivergence is not inherently a mental illness. It's a form of human cognitive diversity.
Yeah, it just means your brain works a little different.
Yeah.
Like all of us.
Yeah.
Even people who fit into the neurotypical category,
mm-hmm.
their brain still has slight differences.
Right.
It's just a different kind of difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So talked a little bit about what neurodivergence is. Just broadly, how would you classify what mental health is?
Yeah, I feel like mental health refers to it's like a catch-all. It's like a person's emotional, psychological, social well-being.
Mm-hmm.
It affects, how people behave, how they're thinking, how they're feeling. Some of the classic ones I feel like people know are depression, anxiety, PTSD, other kinds of trauma-related issues, bipolar disorder. All of these are diagnosable and qualify as mental health disorders.
Yeah. So vastly different, but some of the symptoms might overlap, which can make it hard to diagnose.
Yeah. And assess is it neurodivergence? Is this a neurodevelopmental thing? Or is this a mental health related challenge? Or is it both?
Right.
Because there is a connection between neurodivergence and mental health.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we can talk about some of those connections. And first and foremost, people who do have some type of neurodivergence are at an increased risk of mental health challenges. They face much higher rates of anxiety, depression, trauma, and suicidality. And this isn't caused by neurodivergence by any means, but by external factors and experiences that neurodivergent folks have.
Yeah, kind of like you were saying earlier, that idea of like it's not their brain, it's the fact that the world isn't like catering to them.
It's not suited for them.
Yeah, so you see things like social stigma, feeling excluded by certain groups because you're not fitting a norm, misunderstandings, and misdiagnosis, which is super common in like women, for instance.
Yeah.
Historically, women have not been very well studied in our field.
Yeah.
And while there have been positive changes, I think that's still
a lot of room for improvement.
Issue. Yeah. Struggles in specific environments, whether it's like a workplace or school, not being able to adapt well to the structure that's put in place and no wiggle room to help them.
Right.
And also like burnout, sensory overload. Even in neurotypical folks.
Yeah.
They can also experience sensory overload.
Yeah.
It's just a little heightened in neurodivergent folk.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So with that misdiagnosis and overlapping symptoms, unfortunately, our mental health systems might misclassify neurodivergent behaviors if folks don't have adequate training. And a lot of this is coming around as new. It's being more studied. So we're understanding nuances a little bit more. And there is lots and lots of research on this topic that is recent, that is forthcoming. And understanding those nuances more clearly, I think, it is part of our duty as mental health professionals to really understand those nuances.
Absolutely. That like when you look at it holistically, like it may not be just a mental health issue. Yeah. It may be something more.
Yeah.
And I think kind of like you said, like it's newer. And so I feel like, especially for me as somebody who tends to fall more on neurodivergent and also is like newer in the field, it's fresher on my brain. It's something that I am more open to immediately going towards of like, okay, is this something? But like you said, like it's pretty new to the field of like intentionally focusing on that.
Yeah. We're seeing in the media, we talked about how it's kind of like a buzzword right now, that it's showing up all over the place seemingly. And it's lots and lots of folks who are being diagnosed in adulthood.
Yeah. Which, is interesting, right? Of like, okay. And I think especially with women, I think a lot of the population that gets diagnosed later is women because it presents so differently. In like a person who was born a woman. Yeah. Versus like a man.
Yeah. I mean, just big and broad, let's think about our societal expectations of little cis boys and little cis girls, that they're socialized to be very different.
Yeah. And a lot of times women do present with like an inattentive type of like ADHD, for example. And that falls into like the kind of like the patriarchal standards of like how women should be.
Right.
Like quiet, little in their head, little, whatever. Like not super, I don't know what's the word.
It's not really seen as abnormal.
Yeah, it's seen like normal. Okay, like they're just being a girl. Same with the boys and the hyper of boys will be boys.
Right. Yep. Well, we can talk about some more nuances of misdiagnosis in children in the next episode, but I don't want to dive too deep into this so we can get into the weeds, but it's really, really common to receive a misdiagnosis when you're neurodivergent to a lot of those overlapping symptoms. And it's a really important discussion, especially for mental health professionals, to understand the nuances a little bit more.
Yeah.
But for now, we'll put a pin in that one and just highlight that misdiagnosis is very, very common, especially for people who are born as women. And a lot of women in adulthood are being diagnosed because we understand it more.
Yeah. So people are having more understanding of what's going on with them and like having more access to tools and resources that like help them take care of themselves of how do I function as a neurodivergent person in a space that wasn't created for me.
Yeah.
And how do I take care of my mental health as part of that? And so kind of on that front, that all like that's the goal, that these people have that not everyone does. There are barriers to like seeking care, whether that's like specifically for your neurodivergence or its relationship to your mental health.
Right. Unfortunately, it's really difficult for a lot of people to access mental health care in general, or not even mental health, that a lot of practitioners who are in the medical field can be really invalidating and dismissive for folks who bring these concerns to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have heard more than once a client say, I talked to my doctor about this, and she said that I do really well at work. I was really high achieving, so there's not any way that I could have any type of ADHD or autism.
Yeah. And even on that front of not only like professionals, but like people in your life. I've also kind of on a similar front had clients who have been like the golden child, the star student, the overachiever. And it's because they were neurodivergent.
Right.
But no one, just because you're high achieving doesn't mean you're not struggling.
Right.
Doesn't mean that you don't need support.
That you spent your whole life struggling and having to work in different ways and at a different capacity than neurotypical people, but that's not the part that is seen. That's the internal experiences that we carry.
Yeah, absolutely. And even in our field, I feel like sometimes, like, again, like we're still growing and we're still evolving, but that sometimes more traditional models of therapy can be inaccessible or not as effective for people who either have ADHD or autism or any of the neurodivergent like, qualities.
Right. Yeah. Something that neurodivergent folks report a lot is feeling different, that my whole life I've felt different.
Yeah.
And bringing that to a therapist who says, yeah, we all feel a little different sometimes.
It feels invalidating. Yes. And it's a different kind of different.
Yeah.
Like I feel different. I feel weird. I feel on the outside.
Okay. Let's explore that a little bit more. Let's be open to the possibility that this might be something else.
Yeah. And so I think, there's like a figuring out how like neurodiversity affirming care shows up in your space.
Yeah.
Like there's like some nuance to it of, okay. Yeah. Like validation is also super important, but also pointing out that like maybe your brain literally does work different and that's also okay.
Yeah. And that is not any fault of yours. Let's
remove
that guilt and shame and self-blame, that it's not a choice that you've made. You're not lazy.
Yeah.
You didn't choose to have a brain that is different. So let's explore what life can be like to support you.
Yeah. And that part, like the shame, it comes up so often with folks that I work with.
Same.
Of like, again, I'm lazy. I am just not working hard enough. I'm, all of these things.
Why can't I just do the thing?
Why can't I do the thing?
I can so clearly see I need to do that thing. Why can't I do that thing?
So easy for everyone else.
Right.
Why can't I just do it?
Right.
There must be something wrong with me.
Right. And imagine being a kid, or especially a little cisgender little girl, growing up with those experiences of what is wrong with me. That is a core belief in your brain that something is inherently wrong with me, and you carry that.
Yeah. Just tough, because that takes time to unwire and unprocess. Nothing was ever wrong with you. You just weren't in a space that supported the fact that you had a different way of like processing cognitively.
Yeah. That's a deep wound to untangle for sure.
Yeah. But it's possible. There are approaches that seem to help, and that like are tailored more towards people who are neurodiverse. And, you can get into specific theories, but like general things. Build on strengths instead of deficits. Of back to the shame that like they will focus on their negatives of why can't I do this? I'm lazy. I can't do these things.
Absolutely.
What can you do? Like, what are your positives? I guarantee you parts of this are superpowers that other people probably admire.
Yeah, absolutely. Super common one is when everybody is freaking out in a stressful situation,
I'm the calm
one in the room.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Your brain is made for this.
Yeah. You're designed to handle the chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that strengths-based approach, avoiding framing neurodiversity as a disorder. And I think that attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a really poor name for the experience that folks are having.
It's not a disorder.
It's not a disorder.
It is like a neurodevelopmental thing. You were born with it.
Right.
We can't change that.
Yeah. I've heard lots of talk in our field about changing that classification. But for now, ADHD is the label that we're left with.
Yeah, it just means extra, intentionality on our part as therapists to like hone in on the fact that like it's not a disorder. It's not something that is like
inherently wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, sidebar on that of like having a disorder in general with mental health isn't like a wrong thing. It's just how we classify things.
Yeah. And points to, all right, this thing works a little bit different than what we would typically see in the general population.
Yeah. And so, all of these things, I think, really point down to the fact of like in the therapeutic space of really valuing a neurodivergent identity and valuing the perspective of the client, that they are like a unique individual. Like their perspective, their viewpoint, how their brain functions is totally valid. It can be a struggle when it goes against like how society functions.
Right. When we are a capitalist society who values achievement and what you can do for a company and how you can be better and earn a higher title and the things you can produce for someone.
Yeah. And it goes and goes and goes and goes. And it reminds me of, I couldn't quite remember who the quote was from, but the idea of like a neurotypical brain is just a brain that functions well under capitalism. It's just like a neurodiverse brain. We've got issues. Like, we don't necessarily, we can't like,
we don't conform to that structure
we can't,
very
like, push
well.
That grind, and just keep going.
Yeah,
it's just not how it works.
It's not.
Yeah,
it's not.
Yeah, and even that as a sidebar, I'm wondering if that even is part of why, like, it's a growing thing. Why more people are getting diagnosed because we are in like late stage capitalism in our country,
right?
And I'm like,
perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah, it's interesting.
We're on something.
But, going back to ADHD has kind of been our focus on this one specifically. But you think about like the combination of ADHD and autism, which you mentioned earlier, that's like super prevalent, super common. There's a lot of overlap, like genetically, like how like the brain structures work, which is why it tends to be a comorbid thing. Do you want to talk a little bit more on like what that looks like? What does ADHD look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So people with ADHD often describe feeling too much and not enough at the same time. Having a brain that runs really fast, but it gets stuck. That there's constant tension between having structure and spontaneity and needing to switch things up. Having lots and lots of social fatigue from masking. There are multiple layers of differences, and I'm going to spend a second here on masking because this is a common term, but I'm not sure that folks outside of us who are really interested in this understand what masking is. So do you think you can speak to what masking is?
Masking is sort of like that front that a neurodivergent person will put on, that kind of like the facade of neurotypicality of, okay, like I can keep it under wraps. I can show up in the space because this is how people do it, versus like unmasking, so to speak, is like being themselves in whatever way that shows up of, okay, maybe I have too much or not enough eye contact. Maybe I stim, maybe I fidget, maybe I do all these things, which society's taught you that's not okay. It's not appropriate to do in a public setting. And so you'll mask.
Yeah. A great example of masking, like you said, is being in social situations and feeling like, all right, I'm going to act like those people act because that is normal in what is expected of me. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right, but I'm going to do this so I can be a part of the group.
Yeah. That like it's a compromise on yourself in order to feel like you can be accepted.
Yeah, absolutely. But in that, always feeling like an outsider still and that you're misunderstood, that I'm putting on this mask to be a part of this group.
Yeah.
But they don't really understand what I'm feeling or what I'm going through right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So it like impacts all parts of a person's life, their social experience, their work experience, even their own, like their personal it sounds like they're ripe candidates for burnout. A ton of burnout.
Yeah, because masking all of the time is exhausting. It takes up so much energy to purposefully put aside your own experiences to try and be like other people and fit into a situation when it does not feel genuine.
Yeah, and it's chronic oftentimes. The world doesn't stop being the world. So if you want to feel that sense of inclusion, or you want to feel like you're making it through the day without, ruffling feathers or whatever it is, that like this is a constant thing. And so like burnout is chronic, it's overwhelming. It's physical, it's emotional, it's, cognitive. That, I think mostly, if you think about it in the lens of like autism, it's pretty prevalent there. But again, ADHD, like the comorbid, it's overwhelming.
And this experience of burnout looks different from the traditional type of burnout. I mean, we all can experience burnout to some extent. My whole dissertation was just on experiencing burnout as therapists. So we know that this is a common experience, and it's not unique to neurodivergent folks. However, it is much more likely that folks with neurodivergence, and specifically heading back into autism, that autistic burnout, you said, is chronic. It is overwhelming. And this state of physical, emotional, and cognitive exhaustion that many autistic individuals experience is really misunderstood and misdiagnosed.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, again, we'll get into misdiagnosis in more detail next episode. But it comes out a lot. And I think one that I always hear, and you and I talk about this all the time, it's like the borderline diagnosis.
Yes.
Like chances are it's probably not borderline. We have our own issues with borderline in general as a diagnosis. Very stigmatizing, very harmful. Probably a misdiagnosis.
Probably.
Yeah.
Especially, again, if you're a cis woman.
And that idea of like it makes sense as to why people mask. Because when they don't mask, they get labeled, shamed into having like these diagnoses that aren't necessarily accurate and carry a lot of social stigma.
And not only with that when you're being misdiagnosed, you're not getting the correct treatment.
Yeah. So you could be in therapy for it. Nothing might be helping.
Yeah.
Because you're not trying to target the right thing. Yeah. So it's like a frustrating process then for both the therapist and the client.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think, obviously trying to figure out if it's, a neurodivergent diagnosis. If it is, if you're working with somebody, for example, going back to like ADHD, how do you cater to them? It has to be nuanced and it has to be individualized because their brains work differently. And so, helping them come up with a plan that like feels good to them. Common things are like, how can we make the environment more sensory friendly? How can we minimize being in spaces that are overstimulating? And if so, like, how do we manage it? Whether it's like, do we wear earbuds? Do we have like a fidget we're wearing on ourselves?
Always being flexible.
Yes. Yeah. The flexibility is so important. And again, that's part of the reason why people struggle so much in the way like our current society runs. It's so structured. It's so rigid of, okay, like a 9 to 5, you're working this, you're expected to do that. Their brains don't want to do that.
Right.
I feel like that sounds awful.
That is absolute torture, actually.
Finding ways to like get the ball rolling. So like in ADHD and ADHD, like that sense of like task paralysis. Sometimes just showing up in a co-working space or being with another person can help you find that motivation.
Yeah. You feel more accountable.
Yeah. You're like, okay, I'll do this.
Yep.
And then again, just in general, finding a therapist who is neurodiverse affirming.
Yeah.
And I think being intentional about, are they actually neurodiverse affirming, or are they just putting this on as like a buzzword? Again, I love our profession. Sometimes that happens.
It does.
Like they try to attract a niche that maybe they don't have expertise or specialty in.
Right. They don't have a firm grasp on or firm understanding of it.
And that can cause harm.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
A lot of harm. A lot of harm. Yes. Oh, man. Yep. We totally got off track. So listening to a podcast of two neurodiverse folks, we get off track a little bit sometimes. So looping back around again, being flexible.
Yeah.
Again, burnout is a super huge topic for me that I'm obviously very passionate about. Yeah. And for folks who have autism, it is a chronic, overwhelming state that it is described as having a loss of function in key areas like communication and executive functioning and self-care. Yeah. So, of course, we know that neurodivergent folks, as you mentioned, have a heightened sensory sensitivity. But when autistic folks are experiencing burnout, it's even higher, that it is more intensified. And they feel like they're losing skills. They're regressing, that it's harder to mask. It's harder to put on that front. And it can be really long lasting and more debilitating than typical burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes with like so many different causes. Like there are so many things. I think you pointed out a couple of them right there of like sensory overload and masking. Like environments that are overstimulating. Are they too loud? Are they too bright? Are they chaotic? Harder to regulate in those moments. The constant having to mask, like camouflaging autistic traits that like come so naturally to like an autistic person, of having to suppress like stimming, adapting their speech to seem more compatible with like the people around them, mimicking neurotypical behavior. Of that is so intentional. They have to think twice about everything that they're doing. That's a lot. I mean, some people have the privilege of not even thinking at all. They just exist.
They just exist and move through the world. What's that like? That sounds great. I'm sorry, neurotypical folks, I'm not shaming. We are just a little jealous that folks can walk through the world and not have to constantly be thinking about how to meet social norms.
Yeah. So it's over time. Obviously, like we said, emotionally and mentally exhausting. Also, the fact that there are not a ton of accommodations for autistic folk in our world. Again, we seem to be going on like a positive trend of there's more talk about it and more whatever. It takes a while for a society, I think, to catch up as far as like infrastructure.
For sure.
So environments that demand conformity rather than the flexibility we talked about. Still a common thing. Again, there's still like a typical structure to like what work looks like. And then again, that idea of like the star student, for example,
right,
of like overexerting yourself in school, or maybe you're the achieving employee of like going above and beyond without support.
Right.
It's like they may not know how to navigate like not doing that.
Right. And the neurodivergent folks often have a hard time seeking support because they've been self-reliant for their whole lives and believing that, okay, I have to figure this out on my own.
Yeah, because they felt so alone. And then when it is like more high functioning, they've been praised for it.
Right.
They've been praised for the thing that they're struggling with.
Yeah. You're such a hard worker. You put in so much extra time here. Yeah.
So why, again, then it's even harder to access care because you're like, I keep getting nothing but like positive feedback about this thing.
Yeah.
It's causing me internal
I'm burning
distress.
myself out, but everybody is praising me for it. So
what do I do?
There's such a push and pull between, all right, I hear these, I should take care of myself and engage in self-care, but it's
Mhm.
really valued when I put in so much work.
And if they do decide to like mention the fact that like, okay, it is a struggle for me.
Mhm.
Back to that idea that there's misunderstanding, there's judgment. Healthcare providers kind of dismiss it
Yeah.
sometimes. A lot of invalidation of, oh, but you're doing such a good job, you're whatever.
Yeah.
Chronic invalidation is exhausting.
Yeah. Ooh, the chronic invalidation. This is a hot topic in the mental health world of self-diagnosis.
Yeah.
I didn't plan this in my talking points, but as you're talking, it's coming up for me that I often see mental health professionals who don't appreciate or don't accept when clients come in with a self-diagnosis.
Yeah.
That is a punch to the gut for me because I value so much the experience of a client.
Yeah.
And I tell every single client that walks in here that you know yourself better than I will ever know you.
Absolutely.
So instead of invalidating of, oh, you saw that on TikTok? Okay, sure, that's what you think. No, sit in that experience and say, okay,
yeah,
tell me why you relate to that.
Get curious. Yeah. I'll even walk through like a diagnosis with a client. I'm like, okay, like what parts of it make sense to you? What parts feel like you? How have you seen this in your life?
What would you like to understand more about yourself?
Exactly. Of the understanding. Because none of our clients are stupid.
No.
Like you said, they know themselves. And if this felt compelling to them, if it resonated with them, it's probably for a reason.
Right. If somebody's bringing this to you, it feels important to them. So that is what matters. Yeah. And it really breaks my heart when I see so many people jump on that train of invalidating experiences or self-diagnosis of folks. And sometimes maybe it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
But that's not something we can judge from the moment somebody walks in telling us that.
Yeah. And I feel like it's tricky for some people of like, I can also see the empathetic side for practitioners who maybe fall into that of the idea of trying to be validating in it of, oh, like a relief or whatever. I don't think it's this thing, which maybe they are seeing as like, okay, like maybe it's a positive. Maybe they'll be delighted that they don't have this diagnosis. Right. But again, chances are that's probably going to feel invalidating, especially like in a first session or two when this person came to you and felt pretty resolute and like what was wrong with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine you're coming in for a first session, Zoe, and you say, I ask, what brings you in today? And you say, I've been getting a ton of content fed to me on socials that are about autism, and it feels like it's really hitting home.
Like, oh.
And me as a practitioner, if I look at someone and say, oh, you don't look autistic.
Oh, knife in the gut.
Well, first of all, you're probably never going to come back.
Yeah. No, you're like, okay, screw this therapist.
But then how long is it going to be before you as a client trust another practitioner?
Yeah.
Will you ever? Who knows?
It's so important to meet clients where they're at. Especially because like therapy is such a vulnerable thing. If it's your first time, if you've been before, you're still like confiding in a new person. You're still building a new therapeutic relationship. It takes a lot of mental and emotional energy to start establishing that. And if it's betrayed on like session one, kind of a downer. Doesn't really make you feel compelled to come back.
No, not so much.
Yeah.
There's also the experience of clients that believe that their mental health practitioner, their therapist, knows best. So they'll keep coming back because they believe that that person knows, that they're in a position of power to make a correct diagnosis and that, maybe these feelings that I was having were wrong.
Yeah. And then again, like, is that causing clients harm like we talked about earlier?
Building some more shame in there.
Probably. Yeah.
So, mental health practitioners that are listening, I would invite you to remain curious and open, especially if a client brings you a self-diagnosis and you may believe or feel that this is not accurate, but please center your client. bring in some Carl Rogers and
Love it.
remain open, curious, and empathetic to understanding why they might feel that way.
Pretty please.
Please, with a cherry on top. Please, please.
So going back again, as we do.
Sorry, important topic.
Back to more of like the actual signs and symptoms of like what autistic burnout might look like.
Yeah.
It covers a bunch of things from cognitive, emotional, physical, behavioral. On the cognitive front, maybe there's some memory issues, difficulty speaking or writing, trouble concentrating. I think that one comes up a lot.
Feeling mentally stuck.
Yeah. Emotional, like feeling either numb or volatile, like either I'm under or overreactive in a space, a sense of helplessness or helplessness, which can be a learned thing based on being in a society that doesn't seem to accommodate you. Depression. Pretty common one. On the physical front, fatigue, body aches or pains, headaches, feeling like physically shut down.
Just depleted of energy.
Like I can't do anything. I'm going to sit here and not do anything. That's it.
I can't.
I literally can't. Yeah. And behavioral of like not being able to put on the performance of masking. Maybe you have more of like, you hit your threshold, you're outside of your window of tolerance, and you see what somebody might call like a meltdown. Like, okay, like I literally have a client who like calls that like their mentee B, like their mental breakdown. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, so like that happens. Or like withdrawing and feeling more socially isolated. Like, okay, the world is too much. People are too much. I need to be alone.
Yeah. So then how do you reset from there, right? Of let's understand what got you here.
Yeah.
So that we can help you build whatever you need into your life to feel like you can slow down and not run into this autistic burnout wall.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, kind of thinking about that and going back to the emotional component of depression. I think like depression and burnout can look pretty similar and they can be co-occurring and they can feed off of each other. But like there are some distinctions. That like burnout is more of like, it's linked to the demands of like the context that they're in. Their social and environmental demands, overstimulation, again, based on like the environmental things we've talked about. They may still want to be engaged and connected, but don't have the energy or capacity to do so. Symptoms usually improve with rest, support, finding ways to regulate emotionally, sensorily. It can take time, but like, again, it's that idea that like they still want to be connected. People with depression typically isolate. They don't want to be around others. They like want to be alone.
And folks with experiencing autistic burnout don't necessarily want to be alone, but because their bodies feel so drastically overwhelmed that they just cannot fathom the idea of doing that.
Yeah, that like they literally have to take the time out in order to come back and function. Yeah.
So what are some things that folks can do if they are experiencing autistic burnout and trying to recover and feel better?
Yeah. So I think seeking accommodations, whether that's like building a routine that meets your need, fitting in sensory-friendly environments, finding community with other autistic folk or support networks, resting. And, you know, rest is so much more than just like laying down and going to sleep. Like unmasking, allowing yourself to truly express yourself and feel like you can just exist as you are. I think, you know, reducing back to the accommodation front, reducing demands across the board. Even again, if you're being praised for these things, you're such a hard worker, you do such a good job. Because that's a process too of, okay, like I can technically meet these, but at what cost?
Right.
Of, okay, maybe you have to reduce like how you're showing up, which can be a really shitty feeling, knowing that like it is possible for me to exist in this form. And that I'm getting praised for it, that like it makes people's work life easier, whatever, that like me functioning to the point of burnout is an overall positive for the environment of like, okay, like how do I put myself first?
Can I do that?
Yeah.
I've never been able to do that before.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah. And that, you know, finding support again from community, from friends and family makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
But I think being intentional about how your sports shows up, obviously, be affirming. Like this person's brain works differently.
Yeah.
You may not understand it if you're a neurotypical person because you don't have that lived experience. Still, it's okay that they have a different way of functioning.
Yeah.
Again, two neurotypical people, you probably have different ways of dealing with stress and burnout too.
Totally.
It's the same thing. Keep it low pressure. Be compassionate. Like, what does this person need? How can I accommodate you in the way that feels authentic to you? It's as simple as that. How can I show up?
Yeah. And especially in folks who are being diagnosed with autism in adulthood and trying to unwind many years of learned behaviors to accommodate society and trying to reconnect with their authentic self and understand who or what that even is. Remaining open to also saying, hey, I see that you're trying to figure out who you are and what is meaningful to you and what helps you. How can I best help? How can I support you?
Yeah. And you may not always have an answer, but just offering that to them. It's okay that you're exploring this. It's okay that you're trying to figure out who you are in the world with this newfound sense of your identity. Of like, okay, like I'm a person with autism. Like it's something that drastically impacts my lived experience, and I didn't have that until recently. Or, you know, if you are somebody who was diagnosed later in life, like it can be like a pretty profound shift. You may not know where to start with it, but if you're supporting somebody who's in that position, like you said, acknowledging it, and letting them give you where they want you to be, how they want you to be, if they choose to offer that.
Right. And also, like you said, choosing to offer that, also being okay with if they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. Some people don't. That's okay. Just the act of letting them know that you're there for them.
So powerful.
Can make a difference.
Yep. And sometimes folks who have autism start experiencing this burnout without even necessarily knowing that this is the cause. But I think it's important to remember that the experience of autistic burnout is not a failure. It is a warning sign that someone's been overextending themselves in unsustainable environments. As mental health professionals or just people supporting friends and family, understanding, validation, and tailored support that feels good for them are essential both for prevention and for recovery, for helping folks feel better.
Yeah. And so we talked a little bit about like how to offer support, but ways of like actually enacting support. There are a ton of different ways. So again, the idea of like validating their experience. Because they do have a different experience. It's like, it makes sense that you're overwhelmed based on this. Also helping them reduce their demands. If you had plans, maybe help them reschedule them, maybe help them modify them into a way that feels good for them. Maybe help them say no if like it's something that they don't feel like they have the capacity for, but also don't feel like they can say no to.
If you're close to a person who is experiencing this and they feel paralyzed, offer to handle some tasks. Cool. Can I make that call for you? I want to help you set that boundary. What can I do?
Because also that sense of overwhelm, your brain's not in a state to be thinking super critically. You may not have guidance on how to let your friends and family support you. So also as friends and family, being able to step in and give suggestions, give ideas. Yes or no things of, for example, if you notice that they're feeling overwhelmed, would you like me to sit with you? Or would you like space instead of what do you need? Would it help if I checked in later and gave you time? Like, yes or no. Let them set the pace.
Absolutely. And in that regard, offering comfort without making it feel pressured.
Yeah.
So providing nonverbal support as well.
Mm-hmm.
If they do want you to be nearby, sitting near them, bringing a soft item or a snack, things that feel comforting for them. If they are open to and welcome touch, offering a hug.
Yeah. Yeah. Finding familiar comforts,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's like their favorite show, something they like to eat, something calming, like
Mm-hmm.
coloring or puzzles. These are things I keep in my office.
Mm-hmm.
I have things like that. I have fidgets. I have like weighted stuffed animals. I have pillows with sequins on them.
Mm-hmm.
That like creating a space where they feel like they can exist again. How can they regulate themselves in a way that feels authentic to them?
And of course, be a safe space for unmasking.
Yeah.
Allow them to be them. Let
Yeah.
them stim, fidget, be
Yeah.
quiet, say no.
Yeah. I feel like as like somebody who is a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
it's such a priority for me to set the baseline for that session one. I am also somebody who fidgets in session.
Mm-hmm.
I let them know that.
Mm-hmm.
I point to my fidget basket. If you ever feel a calling to do it, have at it.
Yep.
Like I fidget with my bracelets a lot or my ring. And I just let them know. It's not that I'm not paying attention to them. It's not whatever. It's how I concentrate and stay connected in the moment.
Me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I normalize it. Do whatever you need to do to stay present in this moment. There's no judgment here. There's no whatever. I welcome it. Unmask. Do with the things you need to do to exist in this moment and process and live authentically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Friends and family can do that too.
They can. Hey, you don't need to pretend around me. You don't need to be someone else. I care about you exactly as you are.
Presence alone is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Like feeling seen by the people in your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
Also, as a person supporting them, taking the extra step, a little bit of initiative to maybe learn more about this person's experience. And while every lived experience is unique, there are common themes and traits among people who have autism, people who deal with autistic burnout.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like typically? What are certain things that pop up that maybe will cue you in if a person in your life who has autism is struggling? Okay, like maybe I'm quicker to recognize the signs now because I took an extra step to learn some things.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite sources, shout out to Patrick. He has a couple of podcasts, but he has one that is called Divergent Conversations with another co host. They both have ADHD and they have over 100 episodes now that are all dedicated to helping the general public understand more. And they are so good, so great. And I am so appreciative that they expend their energy to help us understand their experiences better.
Yeah, it's incredible. Obviously, they have a passion for it, but it's also a vulnerable thing. And so the fact that they're able to do that for people is incredible.
It is. It is. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
So Divergent Conversations, divergentpod.com. I will link
Shout out.
that. Yes. It's an awesome podcast if you want to understand more about your friends, your family, or yourself.
Yeah.
Great podcast.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about what to do.
We did.
There's obviously plenty not to do.
Oh, so much.
Again, on the pressure front, don't push them to talk. Don't push them to socialize. Don't try to snap them out of it. It's gonna make things worse.
Yeah, yeah. Ugh.
I know.
Ugh. Yeah. Yeah, telling somebody to snap out of it when they're feeling overwhelmed.
It's not, what do you think that's gonna do?
Probably the worst possible thing that you can do. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pouring salt on the wound.
Yep. Don't suggest that they're lazy if, for instance, maybe they get stuck in task paralysis and can't get anything done. That they're failing. They're not.
Nope.
Don't compare their experience and what their burnout looks like to your own stress, especially if you are a neurotypical person. You are going to invalidate them so quickly. It's going to cause harm.
And don't assume something that has helped them before will work now.
And I think that's a great tidbit for everyone.
Yeah.
Whether you are neurodivergent or not. Ask them in the moment. What's helpful?
Yeah.
Whatever. It may not be the same thing that worked a month ago. What do they
2
need?
days ago.
2 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens.
Yeah.
Be okay to pivot.
Yeah.
How does this person
Even
need to
with
show?
neurotypical folks, that's a conversation I have often of, okay,
Yep.
if the thing that you're doing for you that feels good right now stops feeling good, let's try something different.
Yep.
Let's find another thing that feels good. It's okay.
Yeah. Stick with it until it stops working.
Yeah.
If it stops working.
Well, and especially with neurodivergent brains, sometimes things start feeling novel and they don't feel as comforting as they used to. So we need to find something different.
Yeah.
And helping your person that you're supporting figure out what that thing might be.
Yeah.
Offer ideas.
Yeah. Give that support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talked about a lot today.
We did. So wrapping it up, let's talk about some of the key points about neurodivergence and mental illness.
Blanket statement. Neurodivergent is not a mental illness. Don't conflate the two.
No.
I know it's tricky because therapists also, work, like therapists are the ones working with people who are neurodivergent. And so I think sometimes it gets even lumped in that way, like diagnostically.
Yeah.
But also, most of us aren't trained to assess these things. It is a neurodevelopmental thing.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go to somebody else for that. And I think that's a key indicator. It's not a mental illness.
Right.
It is literally something that your brain is born with.
Yes. Not a mental illness.
Yeah. Again, everyone struggles with mental health challenges, but neurodivergent folks are more likely to experiencing these challenges due to social factors, systemic factors, sensory factors. They have a lot more in place that, makes existing a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We live in a world that is sensory overload.
Yeah, even for a neurotypical person.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, yeah, everything is instantaneous. It's all the time. It's, it's just everywhere. Like, even think about social media, like 6-second videos, like scroll.
Yep. Always being on.
Yeah.
Offering affirming, inclusive mental health support is really essential for improving outcomes and well-being.
Yeah. If you're a mental health professional listening, encouraging you to seek out more training and listen to voices of neurodivergent folks who are expending their energy trying to help you understand. Yeah. And I think that's also a calling to people, therapists who are neurodivergent themselves. I think we can get pulled into our lived experience sometimes. My experience as a neurodivergent person is different than my client's experience as a neurodivergent person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a trap we often fall into in general, I think, as mental health practitioners. So if the way we relate to clients sometimes.
Yeah.
So, I agree. Very important to understand the nuances of the human or humans sitting across from you.
Yeah. So just TLDR, learn, be present, be willing to sit with your client and all of the unique experiences that come with being a person that is neurodivergent.
Remain curious.
Always.
Be present. Honor their experience.
Yeah. It was a good episode. So obviously next time we're going to hop into misdiagnosis and all the fun things that come with that.
Oh, so much.
So much.
We'll talk more about what that can look like and how to challenge misinformation about this topic. So coming all back around full circle to misinformation.
Love it. Never will escape it.
Never will escape it, but we love talking about it. So we will talk about how to challenge that and dig deeper into that topic of misdiagnosis next time.
See you later.
See ya.